My name is Shirley Young, and I'm 32 years old. For most of my adult life, my family has treated me like an embarrassment, a cautionary tale they whisper about at dinner parties, the daughter who dropped out of Duke, the one who worked at Starbucks, the disappointment. What they didn't know was that I'd been building an empire right under their noses. The Westbridge Country Club had been my family's social headquarters for as long as I could remember. 18-hole championship golf course, Olympic-sized pool, tennis courts that hosted regional tournaments, and a dining room where business deals worth millions were negotiated over perfectly aged steaks. The chandelier in the main dining room was imported from France in 1924. The wallpaper in the ladies' lounge was hand-painted silk. Every detail screamed old money, old power, old traditions. I'd grown up here in a way, attending debutante balls, anniversary celebrations, graduation parties. I learned to swim in that Olympic pool. I had my first dance at a cotillion in the grand ballroom. I knew every corner of this place, every hidden alcove, every shortcut through the service corridors. Always as the overlooked younger daughter, the one who didn't quite fit the family mold. My sister Vanessa, 35, was everything our parents wanted. Ivy League educated, married to a corporate attorney, volunteer coordinator for 3 prestigious charities. She wore designer clothes like armor and knew exactly which wine to order with every course. I was the disappointment. I dropped out of college after 2 years, worked a series of what they called concerning jobs. Barista, retail manager, administrative assistant. I showed up to family events in clothes from Target instead of Neiman Marcus. Today, I'd made the mistake of arriving at the club for Sunday brunch wearing jeans, a casual blazer, and comfortable flats. The same outfit I wore to my office every day. The same outfit I'd worn when I closed the Asheville deal yesterday, sitting across from investors in suits who respected my business acumen regardless of my clothing choices. But here, in this marble and crystal palace of judgment, my jeans might as well have been rags. My parents were already seated at their usual table on the terrace when I walked in. Table 7, the one with the perfect view of the 18th hole and the rose garden beyond. They'd held that table for Sunday brunch for 23 years. It was a status symbol, that table. Everyone knew it belonged to the Youngs. Dad saw me first, and his expression curdled like milk left in the sun. "Absolutely not," he said, loudly enough that nearby tables turned to look. "You are not sitting with us dressed like that." I stopped a few feet from their table, my heart already preparing for what I knew was coming. This wasn't new territory. This was the story of my life with them. Mom set down her mimosa and stared at me with open disapproval. "Shirley, what are you wearing?" she asked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Clothes," I said simply. "You invited me to brunch." "I invited you, assuming you'd dress appropriately," she snapped. "This is the Westbridge, not a shopping mall." Vanessa appeared from the direction of the ladies' room, immaculate in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage used to cost. She saw me and actually stopped walking, her mouth falling open. "Oh my God," she said. "Shirley, are you serious right now?" "About what?" "About showing up here looking like that." She gestured at my entire existence. "This is a members-only club. There's a dress code." "I'm aware," I said calmly, though my pulse was starting to quicken. I'd driven an hour to get here. I'd accepted their invitation despite knowing better, despite years of this exact treatment. Dad stood up, his face reddening. At 62, Richard Young was still an imposing figure. 6'2", silver hair, the kind of commanding presence that came from 40 years of running a successful commercial real estate firm. "This is embarrassing," he announced to the terrace at large. "My daughter shows up to the Westbridge Country Club in jeans and bargain bin clothes. Do you have any idea how this reflects on me? On this family? I'm wearing a blazer, I pointed out, keeping my voice level. A blazer from where? Walmart? Actually, yes. Mom made it sound like she'd been physically wounded. Shirley Catherine Young, you will leave this club immediately and return when you're appropriately dressed. Or better yet, don't return at all. Several other families were watching now, including the Vandermeers, whose daughter had gone to prep school with Vanessa. I could see Mrs. Vandermeer whispering to her husband, probably relishing this display of family dysfunction. The Hendersons were staring too, and the Whitfields. All these people who'd known me since I was a child, who'd watched me grow up in this club, who'd probably heard my parents' dismissive comments about me for years. Now they were witnessing the latest installment of the Young's disappointing daughter show. I was invited, I said quietly. You called me Thursday and specifically asked me to join you for Sunday brunch. I assumed you'd have the common sense to dress properly, Mom snapped. Clearly, I overestimated you. Again. That word hung in the air. Again. As if my entire existence was just one long series of disappointments. Vanessa stepped closer, lowering her voice, but not enough. Shirley, you're making a scene. Everyone's staring. Just go home, change, and maybe we can salvage this. I drove an hour to get here. Then you should have thought about that before leaving the house looking like a homeless person. The comparison sat between us like poison. I'd heard worse from them over the years, but it never quite stopped stinging. The casual cruelty delivered with such confidence. Dad gestured sharply toward the entrance. Leave. Now, before you embarrass this family any further. I haven't done anything. Your presence is the embarrassment, Mom said coldly. Walking into the Westbridge dressed like you're going to clean houses, not have brunch. What will people think? That I'm your daughter? Not if I can help it. Mom's eyes were ice. We have a reputation here. Your father sits on the club's board. Vanessa is being considered for the social events committee. And you show up looking like this. It's disrespectful. I stood there, absorbing the familiar sting of their disapproval. This wasn't new. I'd been the family disappointment since I dropped out of Duke University 10 years ago, choosing to work instead of finish a degree in something I hated. They'd never asked why I left, never wondered if I was okay. They just decided I was a failure and treated me accordingly. I'll speak to the manager, Dad said, pulling out his phone. Have you escorted out if necessary. Dad, that's not... Do not argue with me. His voice carried across the terrace. You've humiliated this family enough for one day. He walked toward the main building, presumably to find someone in charge. Mom and Vanessa returned to their table, deliberately turning their backs to me as if I'd already ceased to exist. But here's what they didn't know. Here's what they had no idea about as they sat there in their designer clothes, so confident in their superiority, so certain of their power. They had no idea what was coming next. I could have left, probably should have. Part of me wanted to walk out of that club, get in my car, and never look back. But another part of me, the part that had been building toward this moment for 8 months, knew I needed to stay. So I followed Dad inside. The Westbridge Country Club's main building was all marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and oil paintings of founding members from 1923. Old money, old traditions, old ways of determining who belonged and who didn't. Dad was already at the concierge desk, demanding to speak with management. There's a situation on the terrace, he was saying to a young woman in a crisp uniform. My daughter arrived inappropriately dressed, and I need her removed from the premises. The concierge looked uncomfortable. Sir, if she's your guest, she's not my guest anymore. I'm revoking that invitation. She needs to leave immediately. Let me get the manager for you, Mr. Young. She disappeared through a door marked private, and Dad stood there radiating self-righteous anger. He didn't even look at me, just checked his Rolex and tapped his foot impatiently. I thought about all the years that had led to this moment. The systematic dismissal. The casual cruelty. The way they'd made me feel invisible in my own family. It started when I was 22 and dropped out of Duke. I'd been studying business administration because Dad insisted, even though I hated every minute of it. I was drowning in classes that felt meaningless, suffering through anxiety attacks I never told anyone about, crying in my dorm room every night. When I finally left, they didn't ask why. They didn't ask if I was okay. They just decided I was a quitter and treated me accordingly. I remember the first Thanksgiving after I dropped out. I'd gotten a job at Starbucks, was working 40 hours a week, was exhausted but finally breathing again. I showed up to dinner hoping they'd understand, hoping they'd see I was doing better. Instead, Dad made me sit at the kids' table. I was 22 years old, and he said the adult table was for people who were making something of themselves. Vanessa sat at the adult table. She was only 3 years older than me. I ate my turkey next to my 12-year-old cousin and tried not to cry. She lasted 2 years. I'd heard Dad tell someone at a family gathering. Couldn't handle the pressure, I guess. Not everyone has what it takes. I got a job at Starbucks because I needed to pay rent. Mom told her friends I was taking some time to figure things out. Like it was a phase, a temporary madness I'd recover from. Every single time I saw them after that, there was judgment in their eyes. Disappointment. The unspoken question, when are you going to get your life together? When I got promoted to shift supervisor at Starbucks, making decent money with benefits, I excitedly told them at Sunday dinner. Mom literally changed the subject mid-sentence. That's nice, dear. Vanessa, tell everyone about the fundraiser you're planning. I stopped talking. Vanessa talked for 30 minutes about table settings and guest lists. I moved into retail management, worked my way up to assistant manager at a department store. Good money, decent benefits, but they treated it like I was working at a gas station. Still in retail? Vanessa would ask at Christmas, her voice dripping with pity. That's nice. Meanwhile, every one of Vanessa's accomplishments was celebrated like she'd won a Nobel Prize. Joined a charity board? 20-minute discussion at dinner. Organized a fundraiser? Photos shared with every family member. Married a corporate attorney? A wedding that cost more than most people's houses. I wasn't invited to be a bridesmaid. We're keeping the wedding party small, Vanessa explained, even though she had 7 bridesmaids. 7. I saw the photos on Facebook, all those women in matching lavender dresses laughing and posing together. Women she'd known for less time than she'd known me. But I wasn't one of them. When people asked her about siblings at the wedding, I heard her say, "Just me, really. I mean, I have a sister, but we're not close." Like my existence was a footnote, an inconvenient detail. At family dinners, they'd spend hours discussing Vanessa's charity work, her husband's cases, her social connections. When they got to me, it was always the same. "And Shirley's still managing that store, right?" Dad would say. "Still figuring things out." They positioned me at the edge of family photos, like I might contaminate the picture. They introduced me as our other daughter with an apologetic tone. At holidays, while Vanessa's life was dissected and celebrated, mine was glossed over in seconds. "How's work?" Mom would ask. "Good, actually. That's nice. Vanessa, tell everyone about the gala you're planning." One Christmas, I tried to tell them about a consulting project I'd just completed. A hotel that had been losing money, and I'd helped them restructure their operations. They'd increased revenue by 18% in 6 months. I was proud of it. Dad interrupted me after 30 seconds. "That's nice, Shirley, but Vanessa just made the board of the Children's Hospital Foundation." Isn't that wonderful? I stopped trying to share my accomplishments after that. What was the point? But I had a secret. While they were dismissing me, I was learning. I was watching how businesses operated, how managers made decisions, how properties were run. I was taking every certification course I could afford, reading every business book I could find, networking with people they'd never know about. Every dismissive comment from my family became fuel. Every eye roll became motivation. Every time they made me feel small, I worked harder to become bigger than they could imagine. I took online courses in property management, hospitality operations, financial restructuring. I attended conferences, introduced myself to industry leaders, asked questions, absorbed everything. While they thought I was serving coffee or folding clothes, I was building expertise they didn't know existed. I moved from retail into hospitality consulting. Started small, helping struggling hotels improve their operations. I was good at it, really good at it. I could look at a property and see what was broken, what needed fixing, what had potential. I saved every dollar, lived in a modest apartment they thought was all I could afford. Drove a used Honda Civic while Vanessa drove a Mercedes. Wore clothes from Target while she shopped at Neiman Marcus. Let my family think I was still just barely getting by while I built something they couldn't imagine. I ate ramen for dinner so I could save for investment capital. I worked 16-hour days, consulting during the day and taking online courses at night. I networked at industry events, learned from mentors, absorbed every lesson. While my family slept in their comfortable beds, secure in their assumptions about my failure, I was building an empire. 5 years ago, I bought my first property, a small hotel in North Carolina that was hemorrhaging money. 42 rooms, outdated decor, terrible online reviews, staff turnover at 90%. Everyone said I was crazy. "You'll lose everything," a business colleague warned me. "That property is cursed." But I could see what others couldn't. The bones were good. The location was perfect. It just needed someone who cared enough to fix it. I restructured the operations, renovated the rooms, built a new marketing strategy, trained the staff properly, listened to what guests actually wanted. Within 2 years, it was profitable. Guest satisfaction scores went from 2.1 stars to 4.7 stars. I sold it for 3 times what I paid. Then I bought another, and another, each one a property that others had given up on. Each one a challenge that excited me instead of scared me. Each one proof that I knew what I was doing, even if my family never noticed. I built a company, Hartley Hospitality Group. Kept the family name because it was mine too, not just theirs. My heritage, my identity, even if they didn't want to claim me. I hired the best people. Jordan, my assistant, who was brilliant and loyal and believed in my vision from day one. Sarah Chin, my lawyer, who was absolutely ruthless when she needed to be and had guided me through every acquisition. Patricia, Catherine, managers who believed in my approach, who trusted my instincts, who saw value in me that my own family never did. Every time I saw my family, I wanted to tell them, "Look at what I've built. Look at what I've accomplished. See me. Please, finally see me." But I never did. Because I knew they wouldn't believe it. They'd find a way to diminish it, to explain it away, to make it smaller than it was. And honestly, I was tired of seeking their validation, exhausted by it. I'd spent too many years trying to earn their approval, trying to fit their definition of success. 8 months ago, I heard the West Bridge was for sale. The ownership group was falling apart. Mismanagement was rampant. Membership was declining. The property was beautiful, but needed work, needed vision, needed someone who understood both the business side and the heart of what made a club like this matter. It was also my family's social headquarters, the place where Dad served on the board, where they'd treated me like an embarrassment for 10 years, where I'd felt invisible my entire life. When I saw the listing, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about business. This was about reclaiming space, about taking something they thought belonged to them and showing them it could be mine. I bought it for $14.7 million. Negotiated for 3 months. Reviewed every financial document. Assessed every risk. It was the biggest purchase of my career, the boldest move I'd ever made. Nobody knew. I structured the purchase through my company, kept it quiet, didn't make any public announcements. I invested another $8.2 million in renovations, new tennis courts, renovated dining room, expanded spa facilities. My father served on the board of a club I owned, and he had no idea. Now, standing in that marble lobby, watching him demand my removal, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was the moment. Everything I'd built, everything I'd accomplished, everything they'd dismissed was about to come to light. A moment later, the concierge returned with someone I recognized. Patricia Odom, the club's general manager. Mid-40s, sharp-eyed, professional in a way that commanded respect. I'd hired her 6 months ago. "Mr. Young," Patricia said with practiced courtesy, "how can I assist you?" Dad pointed at me. "That is my daughter. She arrived dressed completely inappropriately for this club. Jeans, cheap clothes, absolutely unacceptable. I want her removed from the property." Patricia looked at me, then back at Dad. "I see. And you're requesting we escort your daughter off the premises?" "Immediately. She's violating the dress code and embarrassing my family. I'm on the board, Patricia. You know how important appearances are here." "Indeed," Patricia said, her expression neutral and professional. "And this is your formal request to have her removed?" "Yes. Get us the owner if you need authorization. I want this handled now." Mom and Vanessa had followed us inside, probably to watch my humiliation firsthand. Mom crossed her arms. "This is exactly why we stopped inviting you to family events, Shirley. You have no sense of decorum." Vanessa added, "Honestly, it's like you tried to embarrass us." Patricia held up one hand. "One moment, please." She pulled out her radio. "Security to the main lobby, please. And can someone locate Miss Young for me?" Dad looked satisfied. "Thank you. It's unfortunate, but standards must be maintained." "Absolutely," Patricia agreed. "Standards are extremely important." 2 security officers arrived, both in professional suits rather than traditional guard uniforms. The Westbridge prided itself on understated security, keeping problems invisible to the members. "Wait here, please," Patricia said, then disappeared through another door. We stood in awkward silence. Dad checked his phone. Mom examined her manicure. Vanessa scrolled through Instagram, probably already composing a message to her friends about her tragic sister's latest disaster. I waited, my heart beating faster than I expected. Everything was about to change. Everything. The lobby had attracted a small crowd now. Other members, staff, people who'd heard the commotion. I could see phones out, people recording. This would be all over the club's social circles within hours. Patricia returned after 3 minutes, but she wasn't alone. She was accompanied by a woman in her 60s wearing an elegant pantsuit. Catherine Brennan, the club's director of operations, and the person who actually ran day-to-day management. I'd promoted her 2 months ago. Behind them was someone else. My assistant, Jordan, carrying a leather portfolio. "Mr. Young," Catherine said formally, "I understand you've requested the owner's intervention regarding a dress code violation." "Yes," Dad said, looking pleased that they were taking this seriously. "My daughter is dressed inappropriately, and I want her removed. If the owner needs to sign off on this, fine. But it needs to happen now." Catherine nodded slowly. "The owner is here, actually." She looked directly at me. "Miss Young, would you like to address this personally?" Dad followed her gaze, confused. "What?" Patricia stepped forward, speaking clearly for everyone to hear. "Mr. Young, allow me to properly introduce Shirley Young. She's the owner of the Westbridge Country Club. She purchased the property 8 months ago through Hartley Hospitality Group." The silence that followed was absolute. Total. Complete. I could hear someone's fork clatter to a plate somewhere in the dining room. A woman gasped. Someone whispered, Oh my God. The crowd that had gathered pressed closer, phones held up, recording every second of this moment. Dad's face went blank, like someone had wiped away all expression. What? Your daughter, Catherine continued, owns this club. She owns the property, the facilities, the membership contracts. Everything. Mom actually took a step backward, like she'd been physically pushed. Her hand went to her throat. Vanessa's phone slipped from her hand and clattered on the marble floor, the sound echoing through the lobby. That's impossible, Dad whispered. Jordan stepped forward with the portfolio, opening it to reveal documentation. Legal papers, purchase agreements, financial statements. The purchase was finalized on February 15th through a corporate acquisition, he explained. The previous ownership group was hemorrhaging money, mismanagement, outdated facilities, declining membership. Miss Young acquired the property for $14.7 million and has invested an additional $8.2 million in renovations and operational improvements. He handed the papers to Dad, who stared at them like they were written in a foreign language. His hands were shaking slightly. The new tennis courts, Jordan continued, Miss Young's investment. The renovated dining room, her capital. The expanded spa facilities that just opened last month, our strategic modernization plan. Dad was reading the documents, his eyes moving across the pages but not really seeing. My name. My signature. My company. All of it real, all of it documented, all of it impossible for him to deny. I watched his face as understanding slowly dawned. The color drained from his cheeks. His hands trembled slightly as he flipped through page after page of legal documentation. Purchase agreements, financial statements, architectural plans for the renovations. My signature on every single one. Surely, this can't be real, he said, his voice hollow. It's real, I said quietly. I've owned the Westbridge for 8 months. I just haven't announced it publicly yet. But how? Mom's voice was barely audible. You work retail. You're a manager at some store. I worked retail 7 years ago, I corrected gently. Then I moved into hospitality management. Started consulting for struggling properties, helped them restructure and increase revenue, built a reputation, started buying properties myself. Small hotels first, then restaurants, then event venues. Patricia added, Miss Young's company owns 15 properties across 3 states. The Westbridge is her largest acquisition to date. 15 properties? Vanessa's voice came out strangled. You own 15? 16 now, Jordan interjected. We closed on a boutique hotel in Asheville yesterday. Miss Young flew back this morning specifically to make this brunch. Vanessa looked like she might be sick. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide how pale she'd gone. All those years of pitying me, of treating me like the lesser sister, of introducing me with apologetic tones. And I'd been building an empire she couldn't even comprehend. Dad was still staring at the paperwork, at the signatures, at my name on legal documents that proved everything they were saying. Documents that proved I wasn't a failure. That I hadn't been just figuring things out. That I'd built something significant while they dismissed me. Why didn't you tell us? He asked. I looked at him, at my father who'd just tried to have me thrown out of my own property. When would I have told you, Dad? At Christmas when you spent the entire dinner talking about how Vanessa's volunteer work was real contribution to society? Or at Easter when you told everyone I was still figuring things out? That's not fair, Mom said weakly. Isn't it? I turned to her. You've spent 10 years treating me like a failure because I didn't follow the path you wanted. I dropped out of Duke, so I was a disappointment. I worked retail, so I was beneath you. I didn't marry a lawyer or doctor, so I was an embarrassment. We were concerned about you, Vanessa tried. You were ashamed of me, I corrected. There's a difference. You positioned me at the edge of family photos. You introduced me as our other daughter with that apologetic tone. You invited me to events and then made sure everyone knew I didn't quite belong." Catherine cleared her throat gently. "Miss Young, you mentioned wanting to review membership contracts today." "Yes," I said, grateful for the transition. "Can you pull up the Young family membership, please?" She had a tablet ready, pulled up the account. Richard and Margaret Young, primary members since 1998. Vanessa Young Preston, associate member since 2015. "What are the annual dues?" I asked, though I already knew. $45,000 for primary membership, $12,000 for associate. I nodded. "And the contract terms?" "Annual renewal with 90-day notice required for cancellation by either party. However, ownership reserves the right to terminate membership immediately for cause." Dad finally found his voice again. "Shirley, what are you doing?" I looked at him, at Mom, at Vanessa, at the family who'd just tried to have me physically removed from my own property because of my clothes. "Patricia, can you explain what constitutes cause for membership termination?" She pulled up the relevant section on her tablet. Clause 7.3. Membership may be terminated for conduct unbecoming, harassment of staff or other members, damage to club property, or any behavior deemed detrimental to the club's reputation and values. "And who determines what qualifies?" I asked, though I already knew this too. "Club ownership has sole discretion." I let that hang in the air for a moment. The meaning of it, the implications. Dad's face had gone from red to pale. Surely you're not suggesting." "You demanded I be removed from the property," I said quietly. "You called me an embarrassment. You said my presence reflected poorly on the family reputation. You wanted security to escort me out." "I didn't know. Would it have mattered if I was just a regular member?" I interrupted. "Or a guest of another member? Does the dress code only apply to people you deem unworthy?" Mom stepped forward, her hands clasped like she was praying. "Shirley, please. You're upset, and you have every right to be. We made a mistake." "A terrible mistake, but don't do anything rash." "Rash?" I repeated. "Like trying to have your daughter thrown out of a country club?" Vanessa was crying now, mascara starting to run. "Shirl, I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Please." I stood there, feeling the weight of 10 years of dismissal, of mockery, of casual cruelty. Every time they'd introduced me as our other daughter with that apologetic tone. Every family photo where they'd positioned me at the edge of the frame. Every holiday dinner where my accomplishments, whatever they might have been, were glossed over in seconds while Vanessa's volunteer work earned 20-minute discussions. Every moment where I'd felt invisible in my own family. I remembered the year I wasn't invited to Vanessa's birthday party, because Mom said it was adults only, even though I was 25. I remembered Dad telling a business associate that he had one daughter who made him proud, while I was standing right there. I remembered every eye roll, every dismissive comment, every time they made me feel like I was less than. And now they stood in front of me, in a building I owned, on property I'd purchased with money I'd earned, and they were finally seeing me. Really seeing me. "Catherine," I said, "what would happen to someone who tried to have the owner removed from the property?" She didn't hesitate. "Immediate termination of membership, addition to the permanently banned list, revocation of all club privileges, and if that person was a board member, board positions are contingent on active membership. Loss of membership means automatic removal from the board." Dad made a sound like all the air had left his body. "Shirley, please. I've been on that board for 12 years. I'm up for board president next quarter." "You can't." "Can't?" I looked at him. Interesting word choice from someone who just tried to have me escorted off my own property. The lobby had a crowd now, 20, maybe 30 people. Other members, staff, people who'd heard the commotion and come to watch. I could see phones out, people recording. This would be everywhere by tonight. Jordan leaned close and whispered, "Shirley, we should probably handle this privately." He was right. This was escalating beyond what I'd intended, but the anger, the years of accumulated hurt, was hard to contain. I couldn't take it anymore. I'd spent a decade being made to feel less than, being treated like a burden, like someone they had to apologize for. And now they were standing here, in my property, the property I bought with money I earned, trying to make me feel guilty for defending myself. That was the last straw. I made a decision. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion churning inside me. "Dad, your board position is suspended pending review. Mom, Vanessa, your memberships are suspended for 30 days. "Shirley, please," Mom started. "During those 30 days," I continued, "you're going to think very carefully about how you treat people, about how you judge them, about what really matters. You're going to think about every time you made me feel small. Every time you dismissed my life as less important than Vanessa's. Every time you introduced me as our other daughter, like I was something to apologize for." My voice was still calm, but there was steel in it now. Years of accumulated hurt, finally given voice. "And if we don't?" Dad asked bitterly. "If we don't learn our lesson to your satisfaction, then the suspensions become permanent, and you can explain to your friends why you're no longer welcome at the club you've been members of for 26 years. Vanessa sobbed harder. Mom looked like she might faint. Dad just stood there, his entire sense of identity crumbling in real time. I turned to Catherine. "Please escort them out. They're currently suspended members and therefore not authorized to be on the property." "Shirley, you can't do this," Dad said, his voice breaking. "This club is our life, our social network, our friends, everything. Then maybe," I said softly, "you should have treated your daughter like she mattered more than a dress code." Security moved forward, professional and courteous. "Mr. Young, Mrs. Young, Miss Preston, please come with us." They were walked out through the main entrance, the same entrance I'd walked through 30 minutes earlier, expecting a simple family brunch, the same entrance where they'd looked at me with disgust and embarrassment. Now they were the ones being escorted out. Now they were the ones experiencing humiliation. The lobby was silent except for the fountain in the corner. The crowd of members and staff watched them leave, phones still recording, whispers starting to spread. Patricia approached carefully. "Miss Young, that was bold." "Too bold?" I asked. "I didn't say that." She almost smiled. "Though you've given the members something to talk about for the next year." I nodded, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by the reality of what I'd just done. "Can you have Jordan send me the membership review files? I want to look at how we handle dress code complaints, make sure we're being consistent and fair." "Of course. And Patricia, thank you for backing me up there. That couldn't have been comfortable." "You're the owner," she said simply. "And for what it's worth, you've been the best thing to happen to this club in years. The changes you've implemented, the investments you've made, the staff notices. The members notice, even if they don't know who's behind it." I left through the side entrance, avoiding the main doors where my family had just been walked out. My car was parked in the owner's spot, a small privilege I'd given myself but never told anyone about. A brass plaque read, "Reserved, Owner." How many times had my family walked past that spot, never knowing it was mine? I sat there for 20 minutes, hands shaking with delayed adrenaline. The reality of what I'd just done was settling over me like a heavy blanket. I'd suspended my own family. I'd used my authority as owner to punish them for years of personal grievances. I'd humiliated them in front of their entire social circle. Part of me felt powerful. Vindicated. Finally seen. Part of me felt sick. Part of me felt like the daughter who'd been sitting at the kids' table at age 22 trying not to cry into her turkey. I'd wanted this moment for so long. Dreamed of the day they'd finally see what I'd accomplished, who I'd become. But I'd imagined it differently. I'd imagined pride in their eyes, not shock. Celebration, not devastation. Recognition, not fear. Was this justice? Or was this just me becoming as cruel as they'd been? My phone started buzzing almost immediately. First text from Vanessa. Shirley, please, we can talk about this. Please don't do this to us. Then, Mom, your father is devastated. Is this really how you want to treat your family? Then, an email from Dad. I'm calling the family lawyer. You can't abuse your position like this. There are bylaws. I turned off my phone. Jordan appeared at my car window, tapping gently. I rolled it down. You okay? He asked. Not sure yet. That was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever witnessed in my professional career, he said. And I once watched a CEO fire his entire board during a holiday party. I laughed despite myself. Was I wrong? Wrong, he considered. Brutal? Absolutely. Deserved? He paused. Probably, but Shirley, you need to think about the next steps. They're going to fight this. Your dad's not wrong about bylaws. There are procedures for membership disputes. I know. And if this goes public, which it will, you'll face scrutiny. Vindictive owner bans family over dress code. That's not a great headline. He was right. The emotional satisfaction of the moment was already fading, replaced by the practical reality of what I'd just done. I'd humiliated my family publicly. I'd used my position as owner to punish them for years of personal grievances. You should see their faces, I thought. The shock, the disbelief, the realization that the daughter they'd dismissed had more power than they'd ever imagined. The truth came out in the worst possible way. Not as a proud announcement, not as a family celebration, but as a weapon, as revenge. And I held all the cards. The property, the authority, the documentation, everything. Set up a meeting with our legal team, I said. Tomorrow morning, I want to make sure everything I did was by the book. Already scheduled for 9 a.m. And Jordan, pull together data on dress code enforcement at the club for the last 5 years. I want to see how consistently it's been applied, particularly for board members and their families. You think there's a pattern? I think my father spent years on that board, making decisions about who belongs and who doesn't. I want to know if those decisions were fair. Jordan nodded slowly. I'll have a report ready by tomorrow afternoon. I drove home. Not to the modest apartment my family thought I lived in, but to the renovated Victorian I'd bought 3 years ago in a historic neighborhood. 4 bedrooms, original hardwood floors, a garden I never had time to maintain properly. Evidence of a life they knew nothing about. Inside, I poured a glass of wine and sat in my living room, looking at family photos I'd kept despite everything. Christmas pictures, vacation snapshots, birthday parties. Evidence of a family that had existed, at least superficially. My phone was still off, but I could imagine the messages piling up. The panic, the anger, the accusations. I'd humiliated them publicly, in front of their social circle, their friends, their entire support network. Was I wrong? The question sat with me through the afternoon, through a dinner I barely touched, through a mostly sleepless night. By Monday morning, I had 17 voicemails. I listened to them in chronological order while drinking coffee, my hands wrapped around the mug for warmth despite the fact that it wasn't cold. Mom, Sunday, 2 p.m. Shirley, your father had to be taken to the hospital. His blood pressure spiked. The doctor says he's fine, but this stress. This is what you've done to him. Vanessa, Sunday, 5 p.m. Do you have any idea what you've done? I'm being asked to step down from the charity board. They don't want the controversy. My husband is furious. You've ruined everything. Dad, Sunday, 8 p.m. I spoke with Harold Wellington. He's the club's longest-serving board member. He says what you did violates multiple bylaws and member protections. We're filing a formal complaint. This isn't over. More messages. Family friends asking what happened. Distant cousins I barely knew suddenly concerned about family harmony. Even Aunt Rachel, who I actually liked, leaving a gentle message suggesting I reconsider. At 9 a.m., I met with my legal team. 3 lawyers who specialized in hospitality, property law, and corporate governance. We sat in the conference room of my downtown office, the one I'd leased 2 years ago but never told my family about. Another piece of my life they knew nothing about. "Tell me the truth," I said after explaining the situation. "Did I overstep?" Sarah Chin, my primary counsel, reviewed the documents. She'd been my lawyer since the first property purchase, had guided me through every acquisition, every contract, every legal complication. She was brilliant and honest, which was why I trusted her completely. Legally, the ownership clause gives you broad discretion on membership termination. Your father's attempt to have you removed could reasonably be interpreted as conduct unbecoming or behavior detrimental to club reputation. But, suspending a long-term board member without following the established review process could be challenged. The club's bylaws specify that board members are entitled to a formal hearing before disciplinary action. So I jumped the gun. You acted within your authority as owner, but you bypassed internal procedures. If they lawyer up, which it sounds like they're doing, you'll be tied up in disputes for months. I rubbed my temples. What are my options? David, the corporate governance specialist, leaned forward. Option 1. Stand your ground. Fight every challenge, win on technicalities, probably succeed, but damage relationships beyond repair and generate negative publicity. Option 2, Sarah continued, reinstate the memberships with conditions. Require a formal apology. Implement a family code of conduct. Maintain your authority while allowing some reconciliation path. Option 3, I asked. Sell the club. Walk away. You've already increased its value significantly. Take your profit and let someone else deal with the family drama. That option sat heavy in the room. I don't want to sell, I said finally. I bought the Westbridge because it had potential, and because, I hesitated, because some part of me wanted to prove I could succeed in their world, on my terms. Sarah nodded. Then we go with option 2, but we do it strategically, not because you were wrong, but because you're choosing to extend grace they didn't offer you. I called Dad that afternoon. He answered on the first ring. I could hear the desperation in how quickly he picked up. Shirley, his voice was different, smaller. The commanding presence I'd known my entire life had diminished somehow. He sounded like what he was, a father who'd just realized he'd spent years hurting his daughter. I've reviewed the situation with my legal team, I said, keeping my voice professional. I'm prepared to reinstate your memberships under specific conditions. Silence. Then, what conditions? First, a formal written apology from each of you. Not for my benefit, I don't need it, but for the record, acknowledging that demanding someone's removal based on appearance was inappropriate. That's it. Second, you'll participate in a board review of the club's dress code policies. Make them clear, consistent, and fairly applied. No more subjective enforcement. We can do that. Third, and this is non-negotiable, you'll respect my ownership. No more undermining my decisions. No more using your board position to create problems. If you can't support the direction I'm taking the club, you can resign from the board, but you don't get to stay and sabotage. More silence. Then, quietly, you've really built something, haven't you? Yes. I didn't know. I should have asked. Should have paid attention to what you were doing, instead of assuming you were failing. Yes, I said again. You should have. Your mother and I, we were proud of Vanessa, because she's visible. Her charity work, her social connections, it's easy to see and understand. What you do, it's behind the scenes. We didn't realize that I was successful, or that success could look different than what you expected. Both, he admitted. I'm sorry, Shirl. What we did was wrong, regardless of who you are or what you own. I'm reinstating your memberships effective immediately, I said. The apologies should be sent to Catherine Brennan by end of week. Board review of dress code policies begins next month. Thank you. Dad, this doesn't fix everything. You spent years making me feel like I wasn't enough, like I didn't matter unless I met your specific definition of success. I know. I need you to understand, I didn't buy this club to impress you. I didn't build my company for your approval. I did it for myself, because I'm good at it, and I enjoy it, and it matters to me. I'm starting to understand that. Good, because I'm not interested in performing success for your benefit. Either you accept me as I am, jeans and all, or this conversation is pointless. I accept you, he said quietly. I should have always accepted you. I'm sorry it took this to make me see that. There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. And for the first time in my life, my father sounded uncertain, vulnerable, human. I was wrong, he said finally. I was wrong about so many things. About what success looks like, about what matters, about you. I spent so long being proud of the wrong things, being impressed by the wrong accomplishments. Vanessa's life is visible and easy to understand. But what you built? That took real vision, real courage. I should have seen that. Yes, I said, you should have. We talked for another 30 minutes. Not solving everything. Not erasing 10 years of pain. But starting somewhere. The following Sunday, I returned to the Westbridge for brunch. Jeans, blazer, comfortable flats. The exact same outfit. I'd considered dressing up, proving I could fit their standards if I wanted to. But that would have missed the point entirely. I parked in the owner's spot, walked through the main entrance with my head high. Members I'd never spoken to nodded respectfully. The staff greeted me by name. Everything had changed. My family was already there, at their usual table on the terrace. I walked up and they stood, all three of them. It was a small gesture, but I'd never seen them stand when I arrived before. Shirley, Mom said carefully, would you like to join us? I would. They'd saved me the seat with the best view, facing the terrace overlooking the golf course. The seat they'd never offered me before. The seat where Dad usually sat. We ordered food, made small talk, carefully navigated around the elephant in the room. The server recognized me, gave me a subtle nod of respect. The manager checked on our table personally. Little acknowledgments of who I was now, what I'd become. My family noticed these small gestures, saw how the staff treated me with deference and respect. Finally, Vanessa spoke. I read about your hotel in Asheville. It's getting incredible reviews. 5 stars across every platform. People are calling it a game changer for the historic district. Thank you. And the property in Savannah, the one you're renovating, it looks beautiful. The historic district project, right? The architectural preservation work you're doing? I read that the mayor gave you an award for community revitalization. I looked at her, surprised. You've been researching my company? All of this? I wanted to understand what you've built. And it's impressive, really impressive. I've been telling my colleagues about it. About my sister, who's revolutionizing hospitality management in the Southeast. About how you see potential where others see problems. About how you transform things everyone else has given up on. Sister, I repeated, not other daughter. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Shirl. For all of it. For every dismissive comment, every eye roll, every time I treated your life as less important than mine. I was cruel. I was complicit in everything Mom and Dad did. I'm ashamed of the person I was. Dad added, "Your business model, the way you identify underperforming properties and turn them around, it's smart. I've been telling people at the firm about it." Mom reached across the table and touched my hand. "I read your apology," she said, "all 3 of them. I meant every word. I know this doesn't fix everything," Dad said, "but we want to try to actually know you, not the version we assumed you were." I looked at my family, flawed, complicated, capable of cruelty, but also, apparently, capable of growth. "Okay," I said, "let's try." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. We didn't hug and cry and instantly become a perfect family. The wounds were still there. The history was still real. There were still moments of awkwardness, still conversations that hit sore spots, still times when old patterns threatened to resurface. But it was honest, which mattered more. It was real. It was 2 people trying instead of 2 people pretending. Mom started asking questions about my work, real questions, not polite surface questions, but genuine curiosity about how I identified properties, how I structured deals, what made me successful. She admitted she'd never understood business, had always assumed it was a man's world. "But you made space for yourself anyway," she said. "You didn't wait for permission." Vanessa and I went to lunch one Tuesday, just the 2 of us. She cried for 20 minutes, apologizing for years of dismissiveness. "I was jealous," she admitted. "You had the courage to walk away from a path that wasn't right for you. I've been doing charity work I don't care about for 10 years because it's what Mom wanted. You had the guts to disappoint them. I never did." Dad asked if he could tour one of my properties. I took him to the Asheville Hotel, showed him the renovations, explained my business model. He asked intelligent questions, took notes. At the end, he said, "You're better at this than I ever was at my work. You have vision I never had. I'm proud of you, Shirley. I should have said that years ago." And when other members walked by and saw me sitting there in my jeans and blazer, laughing with my family at the table with the best view, nobody said a word, because now they knew the woman in comfortable clothes owned the entire place. They finally understood that success doesn't always wear designer labels, that power doesn't always announce itself, that the person they'd overlooked, the daughter they'd dismissed, had built something significant while they weren't paying attention. I found my real family years ago: Jordan, Patricia, Catherine, Sarah, the team who believed in me when my own blood relatives didn't. But I was learning that maybe, just maybe, biological family could become real family too. If they were willing to see you, really see you. 1 year later, the Westbridge Country Club was named the top-rated country club in the state. Membership was up 30%. Revenue had increased by 45%. The property I'd bought for $14.7 million was now valued at over $28 million. But more than that, the club had become something I was genuinely proud of. We'd implemented fair, transparent policies. We'd diversified our membership, bringing in younger families, entrepreneurs, people who brought fresh energy to a place that had been stagnant for decades. We'd created a space that valued substance over appearances, where people in jeans felt as welcome as people in Prada. I'd hired staff based on competence and character, not connections. I'd renovated facilities to be more inclusive, more accessible, more modern. I'd taken a place that represented everything exclusive and elitist about old money and transformed it into something better, something that honored tradition while embracing change. The dress code still existed, but now it was applied consistently, fairly, without bias based on who your family was or what your last name meant. And interestingly, once we stopped using clothing as a weapon to judge people's worth, members started dressing more casually anyway. Turns out, when you're not performing for approval, you can just be comfortable. Dad stepped down from the board. said he wanted to focus on his relationship with his daughters, plural, both of them. He started having lunch with me once a week, just the two of us. We talked about business, about life, about the years we'd lost. He asked questions now, really listened to the answers. Introduced me to his colleagues as my daughter who owns Hartley Hospitality Group, with genuine pride in his voice. Vanessa started her own nonprofit, something she actually cared about instead of something that looked good on paper. She'd discovered a passion for supporting women entrepreneurs, helping them access capital and resources. We had lunch twice a month now. Sometimes we talked about the past. Mostly we talked about the future. Mom joined a book club and stopped wearing quite so much designer armor. She asked about my business with genuine interest instead of polite dismissal. She'd started saying, "My daughter owns," instead of "my daughter manages." Small changes, but they mattered. And me? I bought 2 more properties, kept building, kept growing, kept proving that the best revenge isn't getting even. I bought a historic theater in Charleston that everyone said was too far gone to save. Restored it to its 1920s glory. It's now the premier venue for weddings and corporate events. I acquired a struggling resort in the Blue Ridge Mountains, turned it into an eco-luxury destination that's booked solid 2 years in advance. My company, Hartley Hospitality Group, became known for taking properties that everyone else had given up on and transforming them into something beautiful, something valuable, something that mattered. Kind of like what I'd done with myself. The best revenge is living well. On your own terms, in your own clothes, with your own definition of success. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt completely invisible in your own family? Have you ever proven someone wrong who underestimated you? I'd love to hear your story, because sometimes the people who dismiss you are just waiting for you to show them who you really are. And sometimes the best thing you can build is a life that makes you proud, regardless of who's watching. The West Bridge taught me something important that day. Power isn't about controlling others or making them feel small. Real power is about knowing your worth, even when nobody else does. It's about building something meaningful while everyone's busy underestimating you. It's about staying true to yourself, even in jeans and a Target blazer. My family learned that lesson the hard way, but they learned it. Sometimes, the biggest mistake someone can make is demanding to speak to the owner when you're standing right in front of them. And sometimes, the best thing that can happen is for people to finally see you. Really see you. Not for what they wanted you to be, but for who you actually are. That's the real power reversal. Not revenge. Not punishment. Just truth. Finally visible. Finally seen.